9 years ago, I, 38 male now, 29 at the time, thought I had everything. I owned a small but growing tech company, had a steady income, and was engaged to my then fiance, Emily, now 36 female. We'd been together for 5 years, and I truly believed we were happy. Emily and I were planning our wedding, and I was looking forward to spending the rest of my life with her. I also employed my younger brother, Ryan, now 35 male. Ryan wasn't the most qualified for his role, but I hired him because he was family, and I wanted to help him get on his feet. Ryan had always struggled with direction, so I figured a stable job and a supportive environment would give him the opportunity to build something meaningful for himself. Life seemed perfect. Emily and I were excited about our future. My business was thriving, and I felt good knowing I was helping Ryan along the way. But life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you when you least expect it. One evening, I realized I'd forgotten some important paperwork at the office. Emily was supposed to be out with friends, so I decided to quickly swing by the office, grab the documents, and head home. It was late, and the building was empty, or so I thought. When I unlocked the door to my office, I was hit with a sight that made my stomach drop. Emily and Ryan were making out on my desk. My fiance and my brother, on my desk. They didn't notice me at first. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. When they finally looked up and saw me, Emily gasped and jumped away from Ryan like she'd been burned. Ryan just stood there, looking like a deer caught in headlights. I'll never forget the look on their faces. Emily's panic, Ryan's guilt, and the crushing realization that my life as I knew it was over. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. Emily immediately started crying. "It's not what it looks like," she said, even though it was exactly what it looked like. Then, as if trying to justify herself, she added, "Ryan and I, we didn't mean for this to happen. It just did." Ryan, on the other hand, didn't even bother denying it. "I didn't want you to find out this way," he said, as if there was ever a good way for me to find out my brother and fiance were having an affair. Neither of them apologized. Neither of them took responsibility. Instead, they tried to make it about their connection and how they hadn't been able to fight their feelings. The sheer audacity was staggering. I ended things with Emily on the spot. I told her to pack her things and leave our apartment immediately. As for Ryan, I fired him from my company the very next day. I told him he had until the end of the week to clear out his things. I thought that was the end of it, but my family had other ideas. When my parents found out what happened, they didn't side with me. Instead, they defended Ryan. "He's your brother," my mom said. "You can't just fire him. You are so lucky he's not suing you. Him being in love with the same woman you are is not a grounds to fire him. You should take him back because it's not fair on him." My dad took it a step further, accusing me of being vindictive. "People make mistakes," he said. "You need to forgive him and move on." I said they are delusional if they think I won't fire my brother after what he did and keep working with him, seeing him every day. Then they dropped a bombshell. Apparently, they would like to buy my company for peanuts so my brother could keep his job. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My parents expected me to give up the business I'd worked so hard to build just to protect Ryan after he'd betrayed me. When I refused, they disowned me. They cut me off completely, siding with Ryan and Emily and labeling me the villain. The years that followed were the hardest of my life. I'd lost not just my fiancé and my brother, but also my parents and most of my extended family. I threw myself into my work as a way to cope, and eventually, I managed to rebuild my life. A few years later, I met Sarah, now 34 female, the woman who would become my wife. Sarah was amazing, and soon I was deeply in love with her. We've been married for 6 years now and have 2 amazing kids. For the most part, I'd moved on, until last month, when everything came rushing back. A month ago, I got an unexpected call from my uncle. We hadn't spoken in years, so I was surprised when his number popped up. When I answered, his voice was quiet, almost hesitant, and he told me the news. My parents had been in a car accident and didn't survive. The news hit me in a strange way. Of course, I felt grief. No matter what had happened between us, they were still my parents. But it was complicated. We hadn't spoken in years, and there was so much unresolved between us. I'd always hoped we might find a way to patch things up someday, but now that chance was gone. It felt heavy, like there was this mix of sadness, guilt, regret, and frustration swirling around in my chest. After the call, I sat down for a while just processing. Even with all the history between us, I knew I needed to go to the funeral. It felt like the right thing to do. I wasn't sure how I'd be received, especially by Ryan, but I wanted to pay my respects. When I arrived, it felt as awkward as I'd feared. I recognized a lot of faces, family members I hadn't seen in nearly a decade, but no one came up to greet me. It was like there was this invisible wall between me and everyone else. I kept my head down and found a quiet spot near the back. Then I saw Ryan. The second he spotted me, his face twisted with anger, and he stormed over. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "You don't belong here. You abandoned us." I tried to stay calm. "I came to pay my respects," I said. I wasn't looking for a fight, but Ryan was clearly spoiling for one. He kept going, accusing me of turning my back on the family and blaming me for everything that had gone wrong in his life. I didn't want to make a scene, so I told him, "I'll leave if that's what you want." And I did. I walked out quietly, feeling a mix of frustration and resignation. I'd come to honor my parents, but it seemed like that wasn't going to be possible. A couple of days later, I attended the will reading. Honestly, I wasn't expecting anything. Given how things had ended with my parents, I figured they would have left everything to Ryan. But to my surprise, the lawyer explained that my parents had split their estate evenly between the two of us. Ryan stood up and started yelling, "You don't deserve this. You ruined my life, and now you want to take half of what they left?" I stayed calm and told him this was their decision, not mine. If they wanted you to have everything, they would have written the will that way. That only made him angrier. He started pacing, ranting about how I'd destroyed everything for him by firing him all those years ago. At one point, he even lunged at me, but a couple of relatives and the lawyer stepped in before things got out of hand. It was surreal and exhausting, and I was relieved when it was over. After the reading, I couldn't help but think about how Ryan's life had turned out. I'd heard bits and pieces over the years, how he'd married Emily, how she'd cheated on him repeatedly, and how they'd eventually divorced. Apparently, he'd started drinking heavily, and now he was in debt and struggling to hold down a job. I get that he's in a bad place, but I can't take responsibility for the choices he's made. He spent years blaming me for his problems, but the truth is, he's the one who made those decisions. I didn't force him to have an affair with my fiance. I didn't make him marry someone who clearly wasn't loyal, and I certainly didn't make him turn to alcohol to cope. I understand why he's bitter, but I can't fix his life for him. The inheritance wasn't my decision. It was our parents. And I'm not going to give up my share just to make him feel better. Since the will reading, Ryan has been calling and texting nonstop, alternating between begging me for my share of the inheritance and threatening to make my life hell if I don't give it to him. A few relatives have also chimed in, saying I should do the right thing because Ryan is struggling. But where were these people when Ryan and Emily betrayed me? Where were they when my parents disowned me? I've decided to block Ryan and focus on my own family. Sarah and the kids are my priority now, and I don't have the energy to keep dealing with the toxicity. As far as I'm concerned, I'm honoring my parents' wishes by keeping my share of the inheritance. It's not about greed. It's about moving on and protecting the life I've built for myself. Reddit, I need your judgment. Am I the a-hole for refusing to give Ryan my share of the inheritance? OP's brother made his bed, and now he has to lie in it. He destroyed OP's trust, their relationship, and OP's connection with family. And now he's acting like OP is the villain? The fact that he couldn't even control himself at the funeral and the will reading shows how toxic he is. No doubt OP needs to keep his share of the inheritance. It's what OP's parents wanted. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Wow, the audacity of Ryan is mind-blowing. He had an affair with your fiance, destroyed your family relationships, and now he's blaming you for his failed life? That's some next-level entitlement. You're absolutely not the a-hole. Your parents' decision to split the inheritance speaks volumes. Maybe they realized he wasn't as deserving as he thinks he is. Stand your ground. Ryan's outburst at the funeral and the will reading says everything about him. Instead of taking responsibility for his actions, he's trying to rewrite history and pin all his failures on you. You're not obligated to bail him out or give him anything. Block him and focus on your own family. They're what really matters, not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Ryan's life is a mess because of his own decisions, not yours. It's rich that he's blaming you when all you did was respond to his betrayal. And let's not forget the part where he tried to kick you out of the funeral. The inheritance was your parents' choice, not yours, and you're honoring their wishes. Don't let him or anyone else guilt you into giving up what's rightfully yours. So basically, I, 27 female, have been with boyfriend, 30 male, for about 8 years. We've talked about marriage multiple times throughout our relationship, but both agree that it's not what either of us want, for right now at least. To be completely honest, the only reason I would get married later on is for medical and administrative reasons, but also because I get to wear a pretty dress. He feels the same way, which is something that we settled at the beginning of our relationship. Now is where my mother comes in. She's always had this idea of what my life should be like. She always thought I would be married and popping out babies by now, but that really isn't what I want for myself. I've become a master at just ignoring all her constant remarks about my relationship status and how badly she wants to be a grandma. I told her that I understand, but it's not what me and my boyfriend want for the moment. I've had this conversation with her many times, but she just won't let it go. I had noticed recently that my boyfriend was acting secretive, but honestly, I just thought he was planning something for my birthday. Fast forward to this weekend. We were hosting a family dinner for my birthday, and my whole family flew out to be there. During the night, I noticed my mom and boyfriend were constantly sneaking around and whispering, but I didn't think much of it. Everything was going great until it was time to open presents. And suddenly it gets to my boyfriend's turn. He gets down on one knee and proposes in front of everyone. I was shocked and immediately asked him what he was doing. Things got awkward fast. I took him aside and asked what was going on, that we had talked about this not being the right time, and neither of us wanting to be married for now. Turns out, my mother has been telling him for months how apparently I'm dying to get married, but I don't want to tell him because I know he's not ready, and I don't want to push him away, but that if he loved me, he would take this step because it's what I want. I was livid and immediately went back out to where everyone was and started yelling at my mom, telling her that this is a new low, even for her, and I can't believe she would be so selfish and basically trick my boyfriend into proposing to me. She replied by saying she only did this because she thought it was what I wanted, and I told her, "No, Mom, this is what you wanted," and stormed out. I haven't contacted her since, but I have received messages from multiple family members saying I shouldn't have yelled at her in front of everyone, especially since she thought she was doing the right thing. For anyone wondering, me and boyfriend talked about it, and I told him I just wished he would have talked to me about it, and that he should have known that this isn't something that I would want at all, but we are fine and have decided to move past this. So, am I the a-hole for yelling at my mom in front of my family? Not the a-hole. She majorly overstepped by manipulating your boyfriend into an embarrassing situation for you and for him in front of everyone. She deserves to be told off right then and there that your relationship isn't a playground designed for her and now has a no trespassing sign. Not the a-hole. She knew this isn't what you wanted and didn't care because she thinks mommy knows best, which is what I hope you've told people. I would cut back on contact with your mom and tell her she's damaged your trust, relationship, so you need a break from her. If your mother didn't want to be yelled at publicly, then she shouldn't have manipulated an unwanted proposal, publicly. And she didn't think this is what you wanted. It was what she wanted, she alone, not the a-hole. My 15 female, dad, 49 male, is a panel beater and owns a family business that was passed down to him from his dad when he died. My mom, 46 female, and dad broke up when I was 6 and my little brother was 4, after I was the one to tell my mom he was cheating. He would take us to see our new stepmother, 46 female, and step-siblings, 12 female, 11 female, 8 female, while our mom stayed at home looking after my older half-brother, 26 male. Our animals, we lived, still do with dad, on a farm, while cleaning up. She asked us one morning where we went. The story's long, so I'll tell the short story. I told her we were with dad's girlfriend Jay and her kids. Mom went into work, she was his bookkeeper, and confronted him. They split up, but Mom didn't move out until a year later because Dad wanted to keep the farm. He gave her a payout and she bought a house in the suburbs. We stay with her during the week, Dad 3 or 4 weekends a month. Stepmother and kids are aggressive, so I try to stay with Mom more. I was at Dad's this weekend, and we all were having a dinner at the table, 8 of us squished in. And my dad started a conversation with Jay about how a friend of my dad's wife moved out and broke up with him out of the blue. But what actually happened was this man was cheating on her with a 26-year-old girl. He's 50. This 26-year-old came to get her car repaired at Dad's work that was transferred from a 50-year-old man's work. When first transferred, it had her address, but when doing the paperwork today, it had his. so she's moved into his. They were making stupid comments about it, and stepmother said something along the lines of, "It's not surprising because men don't live alone. They need someone there. Women, though, are more independent." She chuckled, and I shook my head and said, "My mom, for an example." My dad glared at me, and stepmother asked, "What?" I told her, "You two have some nerve to judge others for cheating when you both were ducking each other behind my mom's back." My brother didn't know this. All he knew was that dad didn't spend enough time with us, so that's why they broke up. So he was shocked, and so were the others. I laughed and yelled this time, "You're a bunch of malicious hypocrites. I hope you're happy, Jay, because you destroyed a happy family. And you, Dad, I hope you're happy for destroying your relationship with us. I'm sick of lying to everyone. Go duck yourselves and Merry Christmas." Don't know why I said Merry Christmas, but I did. I walked to my room and called Mom. Mom came and picked me up and little brother. I don't know if little brother is mad at me or shocked. Dad's been leaving me, Mom, and bro messages and voicemails. Am I the a-hole? Did you listen to the messages? If so, what did they say? What did the stepkids say about your comments? My dad said, "OP, I was in a bad place when I got with Jay. What I did was a mistake." I replied to this one saying, "You didn't make a mistake. You made a decision knowing the consequences. There's a difference. You thought you wouldn't get caught, but you did. The past is the past. It happened 8 years ago and you need to get over it. The truth is, it was never enough and I needed more. Jay was what I needed." Last one I replied to. "Happy to know that your kids and a woman you claim to love wasn't enough. Mom did more than you ever did. I'm surprised you even know it was 8 years ago, considering you can't even remember my birthday. Even Nan knows you made a stupid decision. She doesn't like Jay. She calls Mom once a week. When does she call Jay? Never. Go duck yourself." I blocked him, but now he's blowing up my mom and little brother's phone with messages similar but directed towards me. Stepkids went to their rooms and on their iPads. I said goodbye to my little sister and my youngest stepsister. She didn't want me to go and cried, but I wrote down my phone number and email on a piece of paper for her. She just kept apologizing to me. I told her it wasn't her fault and that I would see her soon. Not the a-hole. Maybe they should look in the mirror before they judge others. You said the truth and nothing but the truth. They have no right to be mad. Not the a-hole. Absolutely hilarious, and I don't think you misspoke or lied. I do think you should have told your brother about the cheating before this, but that doesn't make you an a-hole. I can't imagine how annoyed and frustrated you were at that table, listening to them be hypocrites. Not the a-hole. I laughed way too hard at the Merry Christmas. Your dad and Jay have no right acting like they're in the right. Cheating affects any child involved. Your brother may be in shock, and maybe he could have learned the truth in a bit more quiet manner, but I think it's good that you stopped him from hearing and believing that awful conversation. So, pretty quick story. Me, 26 male. My girlfriend Madison, 27 female. Her sister with husband, and her younger brother all met up for dinner. Me and Madison have been together 3 years, so I know these people very well. Their family is very traditional and outgoing. They really enjoy roasting each other and have a very open family in terms of what they talk about. So her sister was bringing up her love of meal prepping and cooking for her husband, and how much she loved working from home because she could cook so much more for them. She also said that her working from home has given her the chance to do more chores around the house, so her husband didn't have to worry as much when he came home. Madison's mom then asked if Madison ever cooked for us. We live together, and I do basically everything. I cook, I do all the cleaning, most of the laundry and shopping. Madison takes the trash out. I sort of laughed and said, "No, not really." Madison said to her mom, "He's kidding. I cook every now and then." I looked at her and said, "No, you don't. You've literally never cooked us a single meal." Some of her family started cracking up, so I thought it was fine. It's the truth. I've been with Madison for 3 years, and she's never cooked a single thing for us. I don't care. I'm not with her for her cooking. But I didn't feel like lying to her parents either. Madison's mom gave a disappointed look to Madison and asked me how I did it because she knows I work long hours. I said that we DoorDash a lot because whenever I come home late, I don't always feel like cooking. That I always make us breakfast before we go to work and pack lunches, and that we probably DoorDash 3 to 4 times a week, all of which is true. Madison and her mom gave each other looks, and we went back to eating. On the way home, Madison was being standoffish, so I asked what was wrong, and she went on this wild rant how I didn't need to expose her in front of her family. I said I didn't realize I said anything that was a secret. She kept going on and on about how just because her sister likes being a housewife doesn't mean she needs to be one. I said if the truth being told to her parents was such a problem for her, then she knows where the pans are and she can start cooking if she has a problem with people knowing she doesn't. My parents think I didn't say anything wrong, but my sister thinks I might be an a-hole. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You told the truth. If she's embarrassed by not cooking, it seems like there's a deeper problem she needs to address. She's right. It's okay not to be a housewife, and it sounds like you aren't asking for that. So why is she upset by people knowing that? Sounds like a case of her not agreeing with her parents' housewife standards. But instead of defiantly declaring her lifestyle, she chose to hide it. I can't judge someone for how they handle toxic family members with outdated views. But people aren't mind readers. If she needed her boyfriend to help cover up her disappointing lack of housewife activities, she had to make it clear in advance. Not that he would be obligated to lie and pretend to be some helpless slob who needs his girlfriend to wait on him hand and foot. But that issue is moot when she didn't even inform him that was her plan. Definitely not the a-hole. Just because her sister likes being a housewife doesn't mean she needs to be one. This is absolutely true, no question at all, and I don't think you're denying that. But she can't play it both ways. She can't expect you to do all of the work while she gets credit for something she never does. And she can't be mad at you for telling the truth, especially if she never specifically asked you to keep the detail quiet. Not the a-hole. I, female 29, have 4 kids. Female 6, male 4, female 1, and female 3 months. I was living at home with my mother and my brother, but recently had to leave. Without giving too much info, the cops were called to my mother's house and they ended up calling CPS since they believed that my children were in an unsafe environment, even though me and my kids were not involved in the issue. CPS took my kids, and I was told they will be placed in foster homes and probably split up until the issue is resolved. I do not want strangers to take my children, but my children's fathers won't do so, and the only family I have is my mom and brother, who obviously can't take them. I decided to call a friend of mine. We haven't spoken in a while because I've been busy, but we were close. I begged her to take my children in, and she said she was not able to. First, she told me she didn't have room, but I know she and her boyfriend recently bought a house, a big house, and they do have spare rooms. When I pointed it out, she said those rooms are their home offices and a home library, which isn't really the point here, because she does have the space. She also works from home, so she would be able to stay with my kids, and I even offered to pay her too. Then she changed her story and told me she can't take my kids because of her chronic pain that she has, and chasing down children all day would make her pain worse. I did get a bit angry at this because it sounds like she doesn't even care about my kids. I begged her, and she said that she would talk to her boyfriend and they might be able to work something out since my kids are older. At this point, I forgot that she didn't know about my 2 youngest kids. When I mentioned them, she freaked out and said she absolutely wouldn't take my kids in, and there was no way she could watch so many of them. I tried to convince her, but she stopped replying to my text messages or DMs on social media. She also blocked my number, and I tried to text and call her boyfriend, and he blocked me too. I made a post on Facebook to vent and tagged her even though she hasn't used her account in years. Apparently, her sisters all saw the post and began commenting very nasty things. I think my friend told them what happened because one of her sisters also made a snarky comment about the report and called me a bad mom. I don't know what to do, and I think that my friend is being very selfish right now, but maybe I should have just kept talking to her or met her face to face instead of blasting my business on Facebook. Holy crap, you're the a-hole. You're not an a-hole for finding yourself in a desperate situation if it's out of your control. You're also not the a-hole for scrambling to not have your kids split up. But no one, and I mean no one, is obligated to do you a favor, especially one that entails suddenly becoming a guardian of 4 children, who, by the sounds of it, she doesn't know. You hounding her makes you the a-hole. You blasting her on social media makes you the a-hole. You bringing her boyfriend into the mix makes you the a-hole. No means no, in every situation. You're the a-hole, 1000%. First of all, you said you don't want strangers watching your kids, but this friend is obviously not close enough to know about all of your kids, so that's weird. But more to the point, it is no one's responsibility to take your children for you. I don't know what happened, but if it was bad enough that CPS took your kids, then you are completely at fault for this. Your kids are your responsibility. You are actually the selfish one to just expect a friend to want to care for 4 children for an indeterminate amount of time. You're the a-hole cubed. You're the a-hole. How can you think for even a second that someone who you've not spoken to in at least a year, who you've not seen or texted, to even mention your 2 births and pregnancies, is a friend you know well enough to demand she take on responsibility for your 4 children? I get you're in a desperate situation, and bless your poor children, but your friend is not the a-hole for setting a very fair and reasonable boundary. Lord. Edit. People keep saying I'm a bad parent for having my kids in an unsafe environment, but I wasn't aware of the issues until someone called the cops on my brother, who was responsible. I didn't know what he was doing. I've not lost custody of my kids. I am getting them back as soon as I do what I was told. I just need someone to take them in the meantime. Edit. I understand I am the a-hole and was acting grossly entitled and immature. Thank you everyone for giving me a wake-up call. Even if it was rude, I appreciate it, and it made me stop and think about my actions. I'm going to apologize to my friend if she will talk to me, and I do take responsibility for everything. I should not have posted on Facebook, and I should not have kept bothering her once she said no. I was desperate, but it was not an excuse. I'm going to focus on myself and getting my children back in my care. When I was 12 years old, my mom and dad's marriage fell apart in the worst way imaginable. My mom had suspected for months that my dad was cheating. He was working late more often, taking business trips, and acting distant. But the confirmation came when she found messages on his phone. My dad, it turned out, was having an affair with Melissa, a woman he'd met through mutual friends. The texts weren't just flirty. They were full of confessions of love, plans to leave my mother, and a lot more. My mom confronted my dad, and he didn't even deny it. He told her he was unhappy and that Melissa understood him in a way she never could. It was devastating for my mom and for me. At the time, I didn't fully understand what was happening, but I remember my mom crying for days. Then she told me we were moving out. The divorce was finalized quickly. My mom didn't want to fight for anything except custody of me. She took an apartment nearby and started working longer hours to make ends meet. My dad moved in with Melissa almost immediately, and within a year they were married. Melissa had 2 daughters from her previous marriage, Sophia and Lila, who were 16 and 17 at the time. And that's when my nightmare began. From the very beginning, Melissa made it clear that she didn't see me as part of her family. She wasn't outwardly hostile at first, but there was this constant undercurrent of disdain. She'd make little comments, cutting in a way that only I seemed to notice. As the years went on, Melissa's true colors began to show. She wasn't just cold, she was cruel. Melissa was obsessed with her daughters. Sophia and Lila were beautiful, popular, and, according to her, everything a mother could hope for. She praised them constantly. Sophia could be a model. All the boys at school are crazy about her. Lila is so elegant and classy. She's going to make some man very happy one day. And then there was me. You're getting a little chubby, don't you think? You don't want to end up like your mother. You're so lazy, always sitting around with your nose in a book. Maybe if you went to the gym, you'd actually have friends. You're not ugly, but you'll never be as stunning as Sophia or Lila. It didn't matter what I achieved. If I got good grades, Melissa would shrug it off as unimportant. But if Sophia or Lila posted a photo that got a lot of likes, Melissa would act like they'd won a Nobel Prize. For all her smugness, Melissa was deeply insecure. She constantly accused my dad of being too friendly with other women. If he so much as smiled at a waitress, she'd sulk for hours. Once, he helped a neighbor carry groceries, and Melissa wouldn't speak to him for a week. She was paranoid and controlling, always watching for signs that he might cheat on her. My dad never stood up for me. He was completely under Melissa's thumb. Anytime I tried to tell him how she treated me, he'd dismiss it. "She's just trying to help," he'd say. Or worse, "You're being overly sensitive." It felt like I'd lost him the day he married Melissa. He wasn't the dad I remembered from before the divorce. He was a shadow of himself, bending over backward to keep her happy. And if that meant ignoring the way she treated me, so be it. By the time I was 17, I'd had enough. Melissa's constant belittling, the way she idolized her daughters while tearing me down, it was too much. I hated going to my dad's house. I hated how powerless I felt. I hated that no one ever stood up for me. One evening, I came home from school feeling pretty good about myself. I'd aced a big test and was looking forward to telling my dad. But when I walked through the door, Melissa was sitting at the kitchen table with Lila, flipping through some photos. "Oh, here it is," Melissa said, glancing up at me. "Your dad told me you did well on some test. Good for you. Too bad being smart won't help you find a good husband." Lila smirked, and I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't just the insult, it was the way she said it, like she was reminding me of my place in the pecking order. I mumbled a thank you and went to my room, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, as I lay in bed, I decided I wasn't going to let her keep walking all over me. Melissa's paranoia about my dad cheating was her Achilles heel. I knew if I could plant the idea that he was unfaithful, she'd implode. So I came up with a plan. I started writing in my diary about how I'd seen my dad acting suspiciously with our neighbor, Linda. Linda was a friendly, attractive woman in her late 30s who lived a few houses down. She and my dad had spoken a few times, innocent small talk, but I knew Melissa had always been jealous of her. Here's what I wrote in my diary. I can't believe what I saw today. Dad was talking to Linda in the driveway, and they were standing so close. Then later, I saw him at her house. Are they having an affair? The next day I wrote, yesterday Melissa and her daughters left to visit Melissa's mother, and I heard my father leaving the house around midnight. He didn't come back till morning. I think he was at Linda's because his car didn't move from the driveway. OMG, I can't believe he's cheating on Melissa. I made sure the entries sounded authentic, like I was genuinely confused and upset. Then I left the diary on my desk in plain view. I knew Melissa couldn't resist snooping. Melissa read the diary. I knew because the next morning she was in full meltdown mode. She stormed out of the house and went straight to Linda's, screaming accusations at her. According to what I heard later, Melissa called Linda a homewrecker and even slapped her across the face. Linda, understandably, was furious and threatened to call the police. My dad came home to find Melissa throwing his clothes out onto the lawn. She was screaming about how he'd betrayed her while he stood there dumbfounded. He kept denying the accusations, but Melissa wouldn't hear it. She was convinced he was cheating and refused to listen to reason. Over the next few days, their fighting escalated. Melissa refused to back down, and my dad, fed up with her behavior, told her he wanted a divorce. Once the dust settled, Melissa started piecing things together. She realized there was no actual evidence of the affair, just my diary. She confronted me, screaming, "You did this! You ruined my marriage, you little brat!" I pretended I didn't understand what she was talking about. Now, Melissa is miserable. She's living with Sophia and Lila, crying about how her life is ruined. My dad, on the other hand, is furious with me. He told me I had no right to interfere and that I went too far. He hasn't spoken to me since. Do I feel bad about what I did? A little, but I don't regret it. Melissa treated me horribly for years, and my dad let it happen. I didn't destroy their marriage. Melissa's paranoia and cruelty did. If anything, I just gave her a nudge toward her inevitable downfall. But part of me wonders if I crossed the line. Was it too much? Am I the a-hole for finally standing up for myself, even if it meant playing dirty? Melissa treated you horribly for years, and your dad let her get away with it. You didn't ruin her marriage. Her own insecurities and behavior did. Honestly, it's karma coming full circle. She thought she could belittle you and make you feel small, but you turned the tables on her. Sure, what you did was sneaky, but after everything she put you through, can anyone really blame you? If she'd treated you with even a shred of kindness, this probably never would have happened. Honestly, I can't even be mad at you. Melissa sounds like an absolute nightmare, and your dad was no better for standing by and letting her treat you like that. You were a kid living in a toxic environment, and you did what you had to do to stand up for yourself. Was it petty? Sure, but it was also justified. Sometimes people need a taste of their own medicine to realize the damage they've done. She ruined your mom's marriage, belittled you for years, and now she's mad you fought back? Too bad for her. Not the a-hole. Let's be clear. You didn't destroy their marriage. Melissa's paranoia and your dad's cowardice did that. What you did was expose the cracks that were already there. Melissa has spent years tearing you down, and your dad never stepped in to defend you. How much were you supposed to take? Surely you could have handled it differently. But honestly, why should you have? She showed you no kindness, and now she's dealing with the consequences of her own toxic behavior. Don't let anyone guilt you into thinking this was all your fault. This is the kind of petty revenge that feels satisfying to read about, but it's also heartbreaking because of how badly Melissa treated you. She made your life hell, insulted you constantly, and compared you to her daughters in the worst ways possible. Your dad never defended you, and so you were left to fend for yourself. It's not surprising that you fought back the way you did. Melissa pushed you too far, and now she's paying the price. She's mad because she lost control, not because you actually did anything wrong. Not the a-hole, and honestly, good for you. Update. I wanted to give an update on what's happening since my original post. After their massive blow-up, my dad and Melissa were separated for a couple of weeks. At first, my dad seemed pretty firm in his decision to divorce her. He wasn't thrilled with how she'd exploded over my fake diary entry and caused a scene with our neighbor. But then Melissa went into full-blown apology mode. She told him she'd let her insecurities get the better of her, and that she was just afraid of losing him because she loved him so much. And of course, my dad caved. He always caves when it comes to Melissa. He told me she had been deeply hurt by everything, and that he believed she deserved another chance. He said he wanted to keep the family together and work things out with her. When my dad told me he was taking Melissa back, I was honestly stunned. I couldn't believe he'd forgive her so quickly, especially after how she'd humiliated him and accused him of cheating. But what really threw me was what came next. He said, "Melissa is still really upset about what happened, and she feels like she can't move forward if you're around right now. She's deeply hurt by what you did, and she needs time to heal. I think it's best if you don't come to the house for a while, at least until things calm down." Being told I'm not welcome in my dad's house hit me hard. No matter how much I've resented him for enabling Melissa, he's still my dad. It hurts to know he's willing to push me aside to appease her, even after everything she's done. At the same time, I can't say I'm surprised. My dad has always put Melissa first, even when it's come at my expense. This just feels like the final confirmation that I'll never be a priority to him as long as she's around. I'm staying with my mom full-time now, and honestly, it's been a relief to be away from all the toxicity. My mom has been incredibly supportive, and she reminded me that this isn't my fault. "You stood up for yourself," she said. "If your dad can't see how Melissa treated you, that's on him, not you." Still, it doesn't ease the pain I feel. My 27 female, brother, 32 male, was engaged to my best friend, Julia, 30 female, like 8 years ago. They had a son, Josh, 7 male. Julia and my brother broke up because he was caught cheating with a man on Julia. They separated and my brother ended up marrying that man, 31 male, 3 years ago. They also have an adopted son, Max, 6 male. By the way, Julia and I are still best friends. My brother's stupidity didn't affect our friendship. I'm getting married to my wonderful fiance, Ben, this October. Julia is of course going to be there since she is my best friend, and she has requested that I didn't invite my brother's husband because he makes her feel uncomfortable. I delivered the invitations 2 weeks ago, so I sent it to my brother. It specified on the invitation that it was only for my brother and Josh. He called me asking if there was a mistake and reminded me that his household is 4 people. But I told him that his husband isn't invited for obvious reasons, and that Max could make Julia feel uncomfortable. So to avoid drama, I was only inviting him and Josh. He told me that he would never allow his husband and son to be disrespected this way. I asked him that he should at least let Josh come, but he refused. My parents found out and called me the a-hole for prioritizing a friend over my brother, and Ben seems to be on their side. I mean, Julia and my brother don't get along, and Julia hates my brother-in-law, so I want to avoid drama. I can't please everyone, and my brother isn't in a place where he can request to be pleased because of what he did to Julia. Everyone seems to be on my brother's side and are calling me an a-hole, to the point where I reconsidered inviting my brother-in-law and asking Julia to make an effort to ignore them. Edit. After reading all of your comments, I want to say some things to clarify. 1. Yes, I ducked up by excluding Max from the wedding. I'll apologize for trying to exclude this sweet little boy. We have decided that Max and Josh will be the ring bearers. Yes, we have 2. 2. Ben invited brother-in-law anyway. Ben and brother-in-law are cousins, so brother-in-law is coming. 3. I asked Julia to make an extra effort to avoid them, and she says she'll try. 4. Someone asked me why Julia doesn't have custody. Well, it's because of her actual situation. Not going to get into more details for privacy. 5. Some asked me if brother-in-law and Josh get along. Yes, like father and son. He doesn't even know brother-in-law was the affair partner and the reason his parents broke up. 6. This doesn't mean I approve of cheating. It's just that I love my brother and I want him there, and Ben loves his cousin and wants him there too. Not the a-hole. My answer would be different if the dude wasn't the affair partner. But then I imagine Julia wouldn't take an issue with it if it hadn't happened. Plus, your wedding, your rules. You can invite whoever you want to the wedding, but you must be aware that this will ruin the relationship with your brother forever. If you haven't forgiven him for the affair, it's your choice. You're the a-hole because you have chosen to invite only one child. Your brother has 2 children, and the second child is innocent. You're the a-hole. If your brother cheating was such an issue, you wouldn't have invited him at all. Plus, you're letting your friend dictate who is and isn't allowed at your wedding, based on her comfort level. I mean, you literally uninvited one nephew because he's adopted, while requesting the other to attend because he's not. And your reasoning was because of her comfort. What about your nephew's comfort? Yes, both of them. How do you think being excluded from, being included in your wedding is going to make those boys feel? What kind of damage is that going to do to their relationship? What kind of message is that sending to Max and Josh and their place in your life? They're brothers, but you only inviting one tells them both that they're not. It also tells everyone else who you feel is your nephew and who isn't. Because you're only doing this for Julia, for one day, and not giving a damn about what happens for all the days after with those boys. My fiance hates cheaters. I'd assume most people do, but she really hates them as her previous partner cheated on her and it was very traumatic. They had just moved in together, and she was fantasizing about the wedding and having kids, and he blew that all up. She has zero sympathy for cheaters. Her dad also cheated a few times, and mother-in-law keeps taking him back, but it has clearly hurt her self-esteem. Anyway, my dad cheated on my mom about 2 years ago. It was this big dramatic affair, him acting like an idiot claiming he'd never been in love before, and then leaving my mom. He is seriously a different person now, affectionate. He seems to have emotions. It is weird. My mom claims she doesn't care. I mean, I know on some level he must have hurt her ego, but I don't think she was that hurt or traumatized. Certainly nothing close to what my fiancé experienced with her ex. My mom and dad can be in the same room, act civil, and neither seems uncomfortable. Still, my fiancé has a very low opinion of my father and hates the other woman. Note, this is strictly about the cheating. She is not at all protective of my mom, as they don't even get along. She decided she doesn't want my dad's new wife at the wedding. I agreed, as her comfort is my priority. We told my dad, and he was furious and said he will not be coming. When my mom found out, she freaked and said everyone is going to think this came from her, and she asked for it. She said we had no right to do that, and we made her look like some pathetic scorned ex. I tried to reason with her, but she was pissed. She accused my fiancé of being overdramatic and said we had no right to have any opinion on her marriage ending. My fiancé got pretty pissed and told her it wasn't her wedding. I did feel bad, but said my fiancé's feelings matter much more, and she doesn't want this woman at the wedding. My mom stormed off, and I feel bad. My mom has invested a lot of time and energy into convincing people she has no feelings, and I know people probably will assume it came from her, and I get she is humiliated. I have to be honest, I can totally see where your mom is coming from. It will appear as if it is her issue and not your fiancé's. Mom will be the one who looks bad. You're the a-hole, I think, in cases like this. Priority should be given to the person who is the actual injured party. Your mom was the one who was cheated on. She wants the affair partner invited. She has even communicated that she thinks not inviting the new wife would cause her further injury by painting her in a negative light. You should defer to your mom's wishes. To recap, your fiancé is inviting her father because she doesn't want her mother to be humiliated, but isn't inviting your father's wife, even if it humiliates your mother, because of reasons. Just so you know, this decision is very unfair and uneven. You might be fine with it now, rose-colored glasses and all, but in the future, this type of heavy-handed decision-making will no longer be cute and adorable after a few years. Half-sister is not my mom's daughter. She is my dad's daughter from his remarriage after my mom died. She's 20 female and I'm 30 female. She's getting married in a few months and asked me for the veil for her wedding day. She told me she thought it would be nice to have something borrowed and to maybe start a tradition of passing it through the family. I told her I wasn't comfortable with her wearing it since it was my mom's veil and she's not my mom's daughter or stepdaughter. She told me she's still my sister and I should see it as sharing an important and sentimental piece of my wedding with her for her wedding. That I would get it back that night if it was important, but it would mean a lot to her. It still didn't sit right with me, so I said no. She asked our brother, my fool, her half, and he said he did feel that way, and he didn't think Mom would have liked to see her wear it. He also told her Mom would have twisted in her grave if we did give it to her, after her mom tried to commandeer it when she married our dad, and given she never got over that, she'd probably try to wear it as well. She asked him why that would be such a horrendous thing, and he said because her mom is nothing to our mom. Half-sister responded that she's our half-sister, so something to our mom, and he told her not really. When she got nowhere with him, she came back to me and told me she would do anything to wear it. She told me she knows we don't see her as a full sister, but it would mean so much to her if I could share with her something that means so much to me. I still said no. She called me a B. Then my dad called me up and asked me why we were so against sharing the veil. He said my half-sister is not his wife, and that neither of them were outright wrong for wanting it. He said my half-sister adores me and my brother, and that we are telling her she's not good enough to wear our mom's veil and not important enough to us to share it with her. He said it's not the kind of thing anyone wants to be able to say about their kids. Am I the a-hole for not allowing her to wear it? Edited to add. Was told to add this in, but my dad's wife tried to claim she owned my mom's veil in her attempt to get it for her wedding. She went as far as showing up at my grandparents' house to demand it be handed over. She never got her hands on it though, because they kept their word to my mom to keep it safe for me until I got older, since mom had left it to them to take care of for me. Not the a-hole. It's your veil now. If you don't want to share it with her, don't. I guess pushy and inappropriate is a family trait if her mother tried to get the veil for her own wedding to your father, which is so much worse than your sister asking for it. Not the a-hole. I suspect she's doing this for her mom. Just a little too invested in your mom's veil. But it doesn't matter anyways. Allowing her to wear the veil would not honor your mother in any way. No woman would want their ex-husband's new wife's daughter wearing their wedding veil, meant to be worn by her daughters and granddaughters and great-granddaughters. It's just an absurd request. Hold your ground. Wait, your father's new wife tried to wear your mom's veil to her wedding? The same veil your mom wore to her wedding with your father. What the duck? And they're claiming you're the a-hole for not giving your dead mom's veil to your father's daughter. Nope. If the family dynamics were different, especially if your mom were alive and you were both fine with it, then sure, it would be a nice gesture. But since that's not the case, not the a-hole, it's incredibly weird that both the new wife and her daughter think they're entitled to anything that belonged to your mom. I'd hide that veil very well if I were you. Maybe my anger was towards the wrong person because it should have been on my dear husband. And I know for a fact that my sister-in-law hates it when people tell her that she is jealous, especially of me. But I was very hurt and embarrassed. I'm a teacher from the start, female 38, high school, math and chemistry. I loved my job. My husband is a lecturer at university, male 51. We have 2 children. Sister-in-law, female 39, is also a teacher. I have always loved interior design. Our apartment is something people talk about all the time. People, relatives, friends, etc. always ask me to help them design their homes. When the virus hit and people started working from home, a colleague of mine asked me to help her design her husband's home office. I did, and my colleague made an Instagram post about their new home office. It blew up, and more of their acquaintances asked me to help them. This time they paid. I started an IG account. Soon I did home offices and gyms. When people started going back to work, I started designing for companies. Now I even do restaurants, hotels, etc. I left my teaching job in the start of this year. I've also been developing home gym furniture that will be launched next year. We had dinner at my in-laws last Sunday. That's when mother-in-law started talking about my company to her friends. Sister-in-law got very irritated and said that my clients were only rich men that wanted to flirt with me. I felt a lump in my throat because everyone was listening in shock. She said it's true. Ask my husband's name. He told me that. I told her that she was being hurtful, that I work hard for my company. She said, no, ask him about my husband. He won't stop whining about how he hates your new hobby. I told her that I had always knew that she was a bitter, jealous bitch, but that this was a new low, and that I'm tired of it. She started crying because she hated that people always tell her that she is jealous. When I got home, I felt bad. I embarrassed her where she is most sensitive, and in front of everybody, and for something she heard from my husband. I didn't shout at him, but instead attacked her. I'm always the bigger person. How could I slip? Yeah, I'm probably gonna need to apologize, ain't I? Not the a-hole. Don't apologize. She intentionally picked a time that would be humiliating for you and tried to get your husband to back her up on insulting you. Even if he had said it, he sure didn't in front of a bunch of people. Also, your husband is a jerk for not standing up for you. You should have a really candid thought about the way he treats you. Not the a-hole. Your sister-in-law is being told she's jealous all the time because she is jealous, And apparently, you aren't the only one who's noticed. Did your husband actually say those things, though? If so, then he absolutely sucks too. But you're his wife, and she clearly has a pattern. So don't feel so bad about not scolding him in public. If he really feels that way, though, you have bigger issues than just your sister-in-law's feelings. Why hadn't he been honest with you about it? Is he really that threatened by your success? Regardless, you've done nothing wrong based off this info, other than marry into a dysfunctional family. Your husband may have said those things, but she didn't need to repeat them. She tried to hurt and humiliate you at the table, and that's not okay. She also tried to minimize your accomplishments. You should be proud of what you have achieved, and your husband should also be proud. Definitely talk to the husband, because him talking about you behind your back to her like that is a red flag. Feels like both sister-in-law and husband are jealous, in my opinion. For starters, we're not married anymore. Her, 32 female, and I, 30 male, split well over a year ago. Our divorce was just finalized about 2 months ago. Her family lives across the country. Then, with virus, they hardly were ever around. And throughout our marriage, she only communicated with them once, maybe every 2 or 3 months. Seems like her sister came to visit the state, because my girlfriend and I ran into her at an outdoor mall 4 hours away from our city when we were doing a romantic weekend getaway. It was definitely awkward, since according to my ex and her Zoom calls with family, we were still married. So to her sister, this just looked like I'm out with another woman as a married man. She kept crap-talking me. It was so damn confusing. Then it clicked. My ex never told them we divorced. Her sister didn't even believe me, but I told her the whole story. And I don't know why she didn't tell any of them. I know telling the truth shouldn't be something you ask if you're the a-hole for. The reason I'm asking here is because my ex called me crying about how I humiliated her. She was working up the courage to tell her family we divorced. It was hard because her family doesn't believe in divorces. She said instead of telling her sister, I could have directed her to talk to my ex instead. Then telling me it's the least I could have done after leaving her, so now she has to deal with her family knowing she lied, and taking her chance to tell the story herself about the divorce. So because of the way things played out for her, I'm asking if I'm an a-hole. For me, it was not wanting to be seen as a cheater, but exposing what she didn't tell them makes her seem like a failure, her own words, and a liar to top it off. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. She almost actually succeeded in throwing you under the bus. You needed to clear your name. Your ex lying is not your problem. Her family crashing down on her is not your problem. I hope you got to enjoy the rest of your little getaway with your new partner, and this happening didn't sour the mood too much. Not the a-hole. She's the one that lied. Now that her lie was exposed, she's trying to find someone to blame. You had no way of knowing that she didn't tell her family, so you're not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. If your ex wanted you to maintain the lie she was telling to her family, she at least should have told you that she was lying to her family. Not that you would definitely have been an a-hole even then, but she can't blame you for not reading her mind.